Welcome to the FASA Leadership Lounge, where we get to discuss various policies impacting Florida school leaders. I am Michelle White, Executive Director of the Florida Association of School Administrators.
And I'm Jessica Janasiewicz. I serve as the lobbyist for FASA, as well as a number of school districts in Florida. Today, we have two guests with us from the national level. Dr. Earl Franks is the Executive Director of the National Association of Elementary School Principals, and Ronn Nozoe is the CEO of the National Association of Secondary School Principals.
Welcome, gentlemen. We are so thankful to have you both join us. Earl, can you give us just a little bit of background and introduction? We know you're a former educator. Thank you for being here.
Sure. First, thanks for the opportunity to be with you today. Longtime educator, my 39th year in education, started out as a music teacher, grades 5 through 12 for 12 years, and then moved into administration. I was a pre-K-12 principal in Alabama for 9 years, and was fortunate to move to the state level, working for a school leader organization in Alabama as the executive director for 9 years, and I'm now in my 8th year serving as the executive director of NAESP.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Absolutely.
And Ron, thank you so much. Also a former school leader. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, thanks again for allowing me to be here and engage in this conversation with you. I'm a secondary language arts teacher by training, and then was an assistant principal, superintendent, district superintendent, all in Hawaii. And then I was the state deputy for about 5 years before going to the U.S. Department of Education and working in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education there. And then I went into nonprofit, was at ASCD for a number of years, and then have been at the National Association of Secondary School Principals now since December of 2020. So like many of the listeners, I'm a pandemic administrator, if you will. I started during the pandemic there.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you. And we obviously spend a lot of time talking about Florida policies, but we also try to take the opportunity to highlight what's happening at the federal level when we can. And FASA works to keep our members informed about what's happening in DC, but obviously you all get a much more personal perspective. When you move from the state level to the national, what was the biggest change as a school leader or as an association leader going from the state to the national perspective?
Probably for me, it was moving from work on the state level related to advocacy to a federal. I was a registered lobbyist for 9 years in the state of Alabama. I was at the State House pretty much every day they were in session, going to education policy committee meetings, budget hearings, and so on. And we don't have the capacity to do that at the federal level. At NAESP, most of our work is done on Capitol Hill, working with the Senate and the House of Representatives. So that was probably the main difference, change. And the second would be at the national level, we work with state affiliate organizations. And when I was the state executive director, we worked with members and districts. And so that's the two biggest changes, I think, for me.
Ron?
For me, coming from the state level and then going to the federal government was a big shift because as a state person and as a school person, I thought I knew how the world worked. And then I went to DC and served in the administration and realized, that I really had a very different understanding of how the world really worked. And so getting to learn how things get done in DC and how things don't get done in DC, and then like all the intricacies of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes in education policy and funding was just a really huge eye-opening experience for me. And I'm glad that I learned it because now we can take that back to both the national in terms of NAESP and NASSP level, as well as our states.
Absolutely. And, we host an annual advocacy day through FASA in our state capital in Tallahassee. And of course, I know from personal experience, you all host national conferences to meet with congressional leaders and sharing the priorities that are developed. Can you share maybe like one or two things this year that at the national level were prioritized when it came to being on Capitol Hill for that National Leaders Conference?
Well, just a couple. First, federal funding for education is critically important to both organizations. Title I, Title II, the other title funds. That's something we work on daily at our associations and our teams. Also, mental health supports. We know that those are critically important for students, teachers, school administrators as well, and just following the funds. Funding for vouchers, as we see, are moving, making its way across the United States. So those are just a couple of that I would mention.
Well, just tagging on to, of course, I agree with what Earl's just shared. From my perspective, I think one of the pieces that we spent time on was really talking about the value of public education and why it's so important. And not only why it's important, but also how complicated it is and why, that we always are asking for funding and resources, but we tried to make a point about why those resources, what those resources really mean for kids. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a piece that a lot of folks in the policymakers in DC think they have a good idea about, but really don't understand. That's why we needed the school leaders in the room to really explain to them in plain terms, these funding sources result in these kinds of experiences and outcomes for kids and why those experiences and outcomes are so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we were in DC in March, the US DOE released over 1,000 members of their staff. How are NASP, NAESP, and NASSP providing support or working with the department or current leadership and staff as they work to transfer some of those responsibilities and ensure that the work is still getting done?
First, I don't know how many employees it takes at the United States Department of Education to do the work. Ron worked there in a prior administration. I've never worked at the department. So I don't really know. What's more important for us are the services and the funding. Does it continue? Does it take 100 people to do that? Does it take 5? I don't know. The most important thing for us is that the funding continues, Title I, Title II, and IDEA. All of those programs we know are critically important to the students that we serve. So I am concerned, organizations concerned, if we shift those responsibilities to another department. I'm not sure that those departments can adequately provide the services that are needed. And we've said that having a cabinet level position for education, it shows our country that education is a priority. But in terms of the staffing, we haven't done anything to support staff, but other than to share our belief that the services and the supports need to continue in some form.
From my perspective, a lot of in fact, all of the major funding streams are, and maybe America is not aware of this, but those are congressionally appointed programs and funding streams. And the administration and department's responsibility is to, within their, priorities, the administration and the department's own priorities between the president and the secretary, carry out those congressionally mandated programs and to deliver the services as approved by Congress. And so, whether it's the Department of Education doing it or not, those things still need to happen in schools, and Congress has oversight over those things to make sure. So for me, the concern really is, as a former state deputy, if I think about it as a state deputy, man, am I okay with just getting a big block of funding and figuring out what we're going to do that best meets the needs of the people that I serve? Sure, I can handle that, no problem. But what about states who might not have that capacity? What about states who might not have that experience? That's a lot of responsibility that comes with that congressional oversight. And so, the federal government, love them or hate them or whatever your view is of the federal government, the Department of Education performs some of those very important functions. And as many Dear Colleague letters as we've received in the field, sometimes we're not aware that actually some of those things that appear to be burdensome are actually saving us from a lot of the other headache that would take us away from the work that we provide students directly. So that work has to continue. It's just a matter of where it's going to be. And, again, for states like Florida that have thousands of schools and lots of capacity, it might be easier for a big state like Florida to handle it. Other states that might not have the same capacity, this will be a challenge.
Yeah.
So, trying to figure out how to keep the headache away, as far away from schools so that school people can do their jobs. That's where our energy and focus are right now with the department and with the administration.
Absolutely. And we talk a lot in Florida about just understanding the community and being able to make sure that that funding is there to support the needs
Right.
of the students. We know that our educators that are in the buildings know their students and their communities best and can best provide that feedback. So when we were in DC, we did have some great conversations with our congressional delegation about making sure that that funding continues. And I think it sounds like, and we'll talk probably some budget here in a few minutes, but it sounds like things are on that track to making sure that certain areas are still funded. It just may not be, I don't want to say regulated, but managed in the same way as
Right.
what we have had traditionally. Talking about some Florida policies, Earl, you already mentioned that we're starting to see things like universal vouchers and other topics at the federal level and spreading across the country. We know that Florida is constantly looked at, and even our legislature looks at some other states around the country. What policies, maybe if there are others besides universal vouchers, that you're seeing at the national level that could come into play, whether they started here in Florida or maybe another state that we're looking at?
Well, first and foremost, the diversion of public funds to private schools is a big concern.
Yeah. Agree.
Maybe in one state, it looks like vouchers. Other states, they start small, they call them savings account, education accounts. Some, they focus on special needs children. We're also seeing scholarships, which are tax write-offs for companies to donate money, funds for vouchers and those type things. Those are, we've kind of been, Florida's been the starting point for some of that. And so those would just be some that we're seeing move across the entire country.
I think all those were sounding familiar.
Yes,
They all
yeah.
sounded
Absolutely.
like
Well,
ways
yeah,
we've done here
all
in
of them are in
Florida.
play, right?
Yeah.
It's not just one. That's part of the challenge, is
Right.
that there's myriad things going on. I think there are other changes around school accountability that are coming. School assessing and evaluating schools are coming, whether people are moving over to accreditation models or moving away from standardized testing. This emphasis on data collection is changing. So, we used to be able to see quite a bit of data to assess the health of kids and the performance of kids across all different kinds of dynamics and demographics. And that's changing a bit too. So, in education, people talk a lot about evidence-based and research-based. And, all I say to that is, let's practice what we preach. Okay? So it sounds good in a tagline, we're evidence-based and we're accountable. Well, let's truly be accountable, right? For example, if we're gonna send public dollars to private schools, let's hold them accountable to the same. These are public dollars. Let's hold the same level of accountability. Let's make sure that all those schools provide the same level of access to all kids that all of our schools do. I've told many people in schools, none of your members, Michelle, none of our members at the national level, none of our members turn any kid away.
Right.
Kid shows up at the door. We don't question them. You hold them outside. We just welcome them in because we'll figure out the details later, because that kid needs to be supported and they need to be part of a community and they need to learn. And so, figuring out how to navigate all these different initiatives that people are coming up with. And for us at the association, one of the things that we talk about all the time is people like to look for the silver bullet or the panacea. If you just did this, it would solve all the problems. There's not a single country in the world. If you take the top 10 performing states in the international testing, the PISA, not a single country has this one size fits all cookie cutter model. All of those countries have a very unique and specific to their own country and cultural approach to education. And all of them are systemic. they're not just everybody do whatever you want, whenever you want, because however you want it. And so now we're in the United States and kind of like to do whatever we want, right? So maybe that is the cultural approach for our country. But I think people just need to remember, we need to take care of all of the kids we serve. And I also believe that choice isn't choice unless every choice is a high quality choice, right? Because you say it's choice, but if not every choice is high quality, then parents aren't really choosing. They're just, picking the one that stands out above the rest, perhaps. And I don't think that's America. I think America is really about raising excellence everywhere and bringing out the best in everyone. So there's a lot going on, but I don't want to take up too much time
for
talking
sure.
about it.
No, that's great. And, we talk about supporting all students, and in the state of Florida, we have almost 3 million students in K through 12
Right.
education.
Right.
And through our organization, when people talk to me about, well, what school leaders are members of FASA, I say all school leaders, because if our goal and our mission is to support and make sure that every student in the state of Florida has a high quality education, then that means they need the very best leader in their
Love
school
it.
and in their district. And so whatever that school looks like, we're trying to make sure that their leaders are best prepared for what is happening moving forward.
Absolutely.
Well, that's why we love what you do.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a good place.
Could our members be more engaged at the national level? What are some things that you all would suggest they do if they want to get involved with all the things that are going on in DC?
Principals never received a course in their preparation program about politics.
True.
Getting
It's a
involved
great point.
in the political environment. It's not necessarily comfortable. They're trained, they go to work every day, their beliefs helping all kids be their best, helping their teachers and their staff. But for us to make a difference in policy and in laws regarding education, you have to get involved. And first, it starts with, this sounds overly simplistic, but you have to know who represents you at the state level and at the federal level. Who is your state house member? Who's your state senator? Same thing at the national level. You got to know who represents you. Know how to get in touch with them. They represent you. Have their contact information, have their cell phone numbers, and then you have to follow through and contact them. Let them know how you feel about the policies and laws that are being proposed, how it's affecting your school and the impact. Stories matter. Like when we talk about federal funding, how are you utilizing Title I funds if you're a Title I school? How are you using those funds to help kids? Stories matter. We can walk the halls on Capitol Hill. You walk the halls in Tallahassee at the State House. But ultimately, those that represent say, you don't live in my district. You don't vote for me. So being a constituent is powerful. And, overly simplistic, they do work for you. They represent you, you elect them. So you've got to take the initiative to contact them after you've identified who they are. And I know at FASA, you make it very easy in your advocacy work to do that. At the national level, we both have our sites on our website, make it really easy. We try to do all the work. All you got to do is click a button. And you put your zip code in, it populates who represents you. We craft a message for you. Just hit send. You can edit, but stories matter. But you've got to get out of your comfort zone and let them know how the funds are being used, how it impacts you, how this policy is going to impact the students. And I've always said the majority of legislators appreciate their local public schools. Maybe not so much nationally, but they appreciate their local schools. Invite them to your school so they can see firsthand. So that you just got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to get active.
I would say the first thing you need to do, if you're not already doing it, if you're a practicing school leader, a principal or assistant principal, you need to get involved with the work that you do at FASA. That's the easiest place to do it. It's your local association. It's people you know. It's not only the team there at FASA that you know, but it's also the place that all of your brothers and sisters in the field are part of, right? So there's a support there. And echoing Earl's comments, it doesn't take much to invite your local elected rep, your state rep to your school and host them. For the secondary members that are tuning in, these folks all want to get on your stage at graduation. They all want to wave and shake hands. And when there's a presidential scholar or some sort of state championship or some sort of award, they want to be there with you. So you have a leverage point that, of course you welcome them there and you're happy to have them there. But, there's always hey man, why don't I take you around and show you the things that are going on? Let me show you how this championship became a championship. Let me show you what our teachers and staff did to help this kid be the Rhodes Scholar. You need to tell them that story because people just don't know. And once you have them there, all of a sudden you've got an ally and a friend for life. As Earl said, they're very proud of their local school. So start with your local association and then practice that there. And then once you get comfortable doing it, then coming to the national and doing it at the national level is much easier than someone who has never done it at the state level. And then you will still teach and learn and people get good at it. But I really believe you got to start local first. And then as you build up your chops doing it, then you can get involved at the national level. So, but going back to Earl's point, I don't think there is anything more powerful than the actual hands-on, story is super important. Most important is actually them being there in your building, seeing the magic of what's happening in your school. And actually, I say magic in a loose way because it's not really magic. It's a lot of hard work, but it looks like magic to the untrained eye because they don't realize all the work that it took to get kids over the finish line. Start with that and then figure out how to, broaden your horizon. And of course, all of us here, your team at FASA, both the NAESP and NASSP, we all have teams and folks that are willing to help people learn how to do that well.
If I may also, building relationships with those elected officials is powerful, powerful. Don't just contact them when you have a complaint. Contact them when you have a thank you. We appreciate you supporting XYZ. Those are important as well.
Absolutely. And we modeled after other states a principal for a day program and inviting those leaders to come and be the principal for the day and really see what it's like. Let them experience all of the aspects from the car line to the lunchroom. And somebody just this week was like, Michelle, I went into an elementary school. I'm very much a middle school principal, and I left after lunch covered in syrup because this was an elementary school lunch. And I said, well, it takes all kinds of leaders to be in all these different schools, but we also need our elected leaders to get that experience in just a whole different way.
And thinking what you were saying, starting at the state level, the added benefit there, I think, would be many of our folks that are now part of our congressional delegation in Florida were first in the state house here or in our state Senate. And so if you build those relationships and then next thing you know, they're up in DC, you've got a friend that from working at the state level.
Yeah, when we were up there in March, actually, so Congressman Byron Donalds is well respected and known in the U.S. Capitol now, but he started in our Florida House. He was a former Florida FASA House Legislator of the Year, and we didn't even have an appointment. We stopped by just to say hi to his staff. While we were there, somebody was able to say, hey, you guys are from school administrators? Yes, we are. They're like, hold on. And we had an entire 30-minute brainstorming session here where he wants to talk about things impacting education. And we just happened to stop by because we were in the hall.
Mhm.
And so it's building those relationships and being able to say to his staff, he's a former FASA legislator of the year. He knows who we are. We know who he is. And we just wanted him to know we're at least stopping by. We're here in DC, and he's one of our people, right? Whether he would have been somewhere else. We still hope in another building. We still would have probably made that effort to go and stop by and see him, for sure.
Yes.
And then I would, of course, encourage every one of our members to be engaged with the national organizations, because you all are sharing so much information on a regular basis, just as much as FASA is. And we try to help share the message through our newsletters of what you're sending, but then also just getting the information direct from the source is always a great place to start.
Do you all have any closing thoughts for our listeners as they lead their districts and their schools to implement new policies?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, I can say it a million times and it would be enough of the work that our school leaders are doing every day, ensuring that all students, not some, all students have the opportunity for a high quality education. That's the power of the principalship, the school leader, assistant principal. You may never know the positive difference you had in the lives of students. You may never know. But it's a critically important role, and I can't thank them enough. And I encourage them all to get involved with FASA if they aren't already. Certainly, we welcome them at the national level, because we know it's a very lonely job. But just know with organizations, you're not alone. As Ron would say, there's power in numbers. And we have a place for you. FAFSA has a place for you to connect with like-minded folks. So not only do you learn best next practices, but you build these relationships and have a personal network that you can always reach out to. That's so important. So, but just thank you.
You know, there's a lot going on in the world now, as everyone knows. There's quite a bit of uncertainty and, you know, changes. And, you know, it's, as everyone knows, it was tough before the pandemic, and post-pandemic, it's been rough. You know, it's been rough on kids, rough on families, rough on educators, rough on our members, rough on school leaders that, you know, have been taking it on the chin for years now, right? So this is going to sound a little weird, but, you know, in these challenging times, leadership matters more than it does in sort of good times, if you will, quote unquote, good times. And so my plea to everyone who's listening, and all of your members and our members writ large, is we have to be the most positive, the most enthusiastic, the most welcoming, the most, you know, hope instilling, hope bringing people that we can possibly be, because as Earl said, you just never know where people are coming from and what they need. And you know, last I checked, it's pretty tough to do well in today's world. And so, you know, my wife and I have 4 children. The youngest just graduated from college a year ago, but I can't imagine what it would be like to be raising little kids at this time. This is a challenging time. And so, you know, our members, principals and assistant principals, every educator really, is this place of hope and inspiration, and a source of hope and inspiration for kids, families, for people that we don't even know need it at that time. And we really need to rise up to that level. I know it's a lot. Every time we get asked to do more and more and more and more. But this is a time where our country is counting on, you know, people who just put the needs of others before themselves, and to do this in a very selfless and generous and genuine way. And that's needed now. So sorry, school leaders, didn't mean to give you more work, but this is the time when, you know, as people say, you know, it's one thing to do right when people are looking. It's another thing to do right when no one's looking. And this is that time. This is the time when we fish or cut bait and find out whether we're all really in this for the reason that we signed up for, because we believe in the good of others. Or maybe, you know, maybe it's time to think about, wow, I need to recalibrate the way I've been thinking about it. And that's one. The second one is, you know, we need every single school leader to be an active member of their state. We have an affiliate, NAESP and NASSP have affiliates in every state. We need every single school leader to be a member of their state association and their national. Because when NAESP and NASSP go anywhere to advocate at the national level, you know, we're proud to say we represent many of the school leaders. It's a different equation if we say we represent there are 100,000 public schools in this country. So we represent all of the school leaders of this country is a very different dynamic than we represent some of the school leaders. And so this is the time where all of the educators who have paid in blood to, you know, to serve other people. This is the time where we all need to get together, stand together, and come together around this effort to make sure that public education in general, really does stay as the cornerstone of this country, because the key to a healthy and happy democracy is really educated citizenry. And so, you know, I didn't want to be the one to give anybody more work, but there's a lot of work. I'm just gonna be real. There's a lot of work ahead, and we gotta get in this together and help each other get to it.
Absolutely. And I think that also is that power of this network of leaders that comes from being engaged in those organizations at every level, and certainly participating. It's one thing to just receive all of the information, but it's another to then engage and to be empowered to move forward with that organization as one. And FASA certainly welcomes every leader, and we would encourage everyone to head over to our FASA website, of course, FASA.net. You'll find more information about advocacy at the state and national level, and membership information, because if you're not already a member at FASA level or NAESP and NASSP, we highly encourage it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So honored to have you as our guests. We want to make sure that our listeners would also share the Leadership Lounge. We're continuing to grow, and we enjoy this opportunity to just share some updates with y'all. So thank you. Stay tuned for more.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lounge podcast presented by the Florida Association of School Administrators. Today's podcast was hosted by Michelle White and Jessica Janasiewicz. The podcast is produced by Jeff Willoughby. Special thanks to musical director David Higgins. Make sure to subscribe to the Leadership Lounge podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts. New episodes are released each Monday. For show topic suggestions, questions, or comments, please email communications@fasa.net. We hope you enjoyed the show.